How to install Grafana on Proxmox. This is a fun one. Proxmox has a built-in metrics monitoring system that allows you to track CPU, storage, networking, disk I/O, a lot of information off of your Proxmox hosts. This is good stuff for you to track because it lets you troubleshoot problems with virtual machines, or better yet, preventatively get kind of a long-term overview of your resource usages and what you might need to do to expand in the future. It does this using Grafana. Grafana is an open source observability platform. It's a great way for you to track metrics for virtual machines, physical hardware, endpoints like standalone desktops. You can even use it to track stuff like GitHub repos. It is a very convenient and very powerful tool. Generally, Grafana can be used in the enterprise and in the personal environment for free. However, you want some support, you're going to have to pay them money. But that's the way life goes, boys. If you want professional support, you're gonna have to fork out some cash. Respectfully, expertise isn't free most of the time. All right, boys. So below we have a very simple network diagram. We got a Proxmox node, which is gonna run either two virtual machines or containers. I'll let you pick which one. But we'll have two servers. Our first server is going to be our Grafana web interface by itself. And this Grafana web interface is going to go ahead and talk to our time series database. This can either be InfluxDB or Prometheus. We're going with InfluxDB for this install because Proxmox actually has native support for InfluxDB, meaning you can ship your metrics directly from Proxmox to InfluxDB and monitor it. It's actually a pretty clean, pretty simple setup. Not only that, but there are also open source dashboards where you can see the metrics of your Proxmox server. Let's look at an example. Behind me, I have our Grafana dashboard. Looks pretty. I like all the numbers and the bars, but it does actually provide a lot of useful information about our current Proxmox cluster. It provides information about our storage pools. It provides information about the amount of logical cores and the total memory we have on each one of our servers. You can go scroll down and you'll notice it also gives you a list of running virtual machines and containers. It shows you host CPU usage. And if you scroll down, it shows you an average. If you wanted per virtual machine CPU usage over time, you could come here. You could come down here and it'll show you per virtual machine CPU usage, per virtual machine memory usage. It looks like right now this dashboard's query for LXC CPU and memory usage is not working. One of the most useful features to figure out delays inside of a system is looking at your VM IO read and VM IO write, as well as VM traffic in and VM traffic out. So again, this is just a pretty simple dashboard I grabbed from the Grafana community dashboards. If you want, you could go in and customize this information to get more specific data, or you could build your own dashboard out. I went with one that was already built due to ease and convenience. Let's focus on the actual install though. You've seen the product. If you like it, you're probably interested in watching the rest of the video. So let's go ahead and get started with getting this installed. First, let's start by logging into our Proxmox cluster. We'll create a new container. We'll call this one Influx because it's going to be an Influx server. We'll assign it our password. We'll choose our template. We then choose our template, which is going to be Debian. For lab purposes, I'm giving this 8 gigs. I'd recommend you do at least 32. We'll give this 2 cores, which is technically 4 threads. We'll give this 2 gigs of RAM and an equivalent amount of swap. Set this to DHCP and just set Cloudflare as our DNS provider for now. When we're done, we hit confirm and just give that a minute or 2 to spin up. After that, we hit start and we just let it spin up, go to console, and then just log in. When you get logged in, you'll want to run some updates. So do a quick apt-get update and an apt-get dist upgrade, and then you let that run. We can then do an apt-get install -y, and you'll need wget, sudo, and gpg, and you just let that run again. You then want to go to Google and you want to search for InfluxDB Debian install. Grab the first link, choose the install InfluxDB OSS link. You just want to scroll down and you'll want to copy this command right here. Notice that it says Ubuntu and Debian. You want to change this based on the operating system you're using. You can just copy this command right here. And what this will do is add the Influx repository key to that machine. You hop back over to Proxmox and you paste and hit enter. Once the key has been added, we have to run an update again. So you do apt-get update. And then what you want to do is install InfluxDB 2. And you also let this run again. You can confirm InfluxDB is now installed by doing a InfluxD. And you'll notice that it starts up. What we have to do is find our IP address. So we'll send this to the background, do a quick IP address. We're at 210, and then we just bring it back to the foreground. Now, if you were to go to 192.168.1.210.80.86, and there we go. You now have the Influx web page up and running. So we know InfluxDB is working and the web page is running and accessible. So let's turn that command into a service. Now that we know that Influx is working on your Proxmox host, you can then do a systemctl enable InfluxDB. Then you do a systemctl start InfluxDB. Now let's go back to our web page and hit a quick refresh to confirm our site is still there. Now let's finish the Influx setup. Click get started. Our username is admin. Our password is whatever we set it to. We'll call this test.org for our organization name, and for our bucket we'll call it test bucket, and then we hit continue. You'll then get your InfluxDB API key. Go ahead and copy that, and we'll head back over to our Proxmox hosts. Back on our Proxmox host, you'll then go to data center. Let's scroll down to metric server. You'll click add InfluxDB. For the name, we'll call this test bucket. For the server, we just enter the server's IP address or host name if you have DNS enabled. Set the port to HTTP. Port is 8086. Organization is test.org. Bucket is test bucket. And our token is the API key we copied earlier. So go ahead and hit OK. You'll probably also want to note that API key down to where we will need it to get Grafana portion of this setup. We're back on the Influx webpage and we want to verify that the metrics are being written to our bucket. So click this little up arrow, buckets, test bucket, or whatever you called your bucket. And you'll notice we now have metrics, right? And then inside of InfluxDB, we can actually create gauges, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to use Grafana to create our monitoring solution. Next, we're actually going to set up Grafana. So to set up Grafana, we're just going to spin up another virtual machine or container. I'm going to use a container for this. So we call this Grafana. Same thing as before, we give it a password. We choose a Debian-based template. We're going to give this 32 gigabytes of storage. We're going to give this 4 cores or 4 threads, which is equivalent to 2 cores. And then we're going to do 2048 for storage and swap. And we get the IP from DHCP. We'll just set the DNS to Cloudflare like we did with Influx. And then we hit confirm. We then start the Grafana server. Give it a second or two for either your virtual machine or container to spin up. I like to use containers for this just because you can manage them from the Proxmox web interface. No need for you to SSH in, right? Once you get logged in, same thing as with Influx, you just run an apt-get update -y and an apt-get dist upgrade -y, and you let that run. After that, you're going to need to do an apt-get install -y gpg wget curl, and we're done. Now you're going to want to hop back over to Google, and then you want to type in Grafana Debian install, and just replace Debian with your preferred distro. Click the wiki for Grafana, click Debian or Ubuntu, and scroll down. And it looks like we have some more tools to install. So first they want you to install apt transport HTTPS and software properties common. Just click copy on that. Hop back over to your Grafana server. We're also going to do an apt-get install -y sudo before we run this command. Then just go ahead and paste your command, and that's going to install the tools you need to get the Grafana repo installed on this server in the clear screen. After that, it wants us to make an app keyrings folder and use wget and gpg to install the app repository. Just hit copy on this command. Hop back over to your Proxmox server and hit paste. Go back to the Grafana install wiki and copy the command for stable releases in step 3. I don't know about you guys, but I do not like running beta software. At least not anymore. Nowadays, I want stuff to work. Then we run another apt-get update -y, and then we can go back to the Grafana install wiki and scroll down to step 6, which is this apt-get install Grafana. So let's run an apt-get install Grafana and y, and we'll come back in a few minutes when this is done installing. And it's done. Now what you want to do is do a systemctl enable Grafana server. And then when you want to start that Grafana server with a systemctl start Grafana server, and we can verify everything is running with a systemctl status Grafana server. There we go. Then we want to grab our IP address, which is 192.168.169. But it's going to be different on your network. Now that we have the server IP address, we then hop over to a new tab, and Grafana runs on port 3000. So we should be able to do a 192.168.169 3000, and that should pop up with the Grafana interface. By default, Grafana has a login of admin and admin for the username and password. It'll then prompt you to change your password, so go ahead and do that. And once you've entered that new password, you'll then have Grafana up and running. But wait, there's more. If you recall from our diagram for how this is set up, we have to connect Grafana to InfluxDB. So how do we do that? It's pretty straightforward. We just hop back over to Grafana. You click Connections, View Configure Data Sources, Add Data Source, and then we want to add InfluxDB data source. You'll then want to enter your data source name. In our case, we're going to call this InfluxDB test bucket. You'll choose our query language, which is FluxQL. It's then going to ask for the web address of our server. For our URL, we're going to enter the IP of our InfluxDB URL and enter the port, which is 8086. We're then going to turn off basic auth. Our organization is test org. Our bucket is test bucket. The token would be the API key you saved from the beginning. The token would be the API key from earlier in this video for your InfluxDB bucket. You go ahead and you paste that in, and you hit save and test, and you know everything is working because it says data source is working, 3 buckets found. And then from there, you can just go to building a dashboard. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Because we're monitoring a Proxmox service, you have 2 options. You can either build your own dashboard, which will take hours, but it gives you a lot of customization and flexibility. Or you could just grab one of the pre-built Proxmox community dashboards to track most of the metrics you need and use that as a template to tweak as necessary. That's what I like to do. So let's grab one of those pre-configured dashboards by going to Dashboard, create a dashboard. And because we want to import this dashboard, we'll click this link to grafana.com. We want to filter our data source to InfluxDB. We then want to search for Proxmox. And this right here, Proxmox cluster Flux, is the dashboard I like to use. So you just copy the dashboard ID. Go back over to import dashboard, hit discard, enter that dashboard ID, which is 15356, hit load, select our data source, which is our InfluxDB test bucket, and hit import. Now we want to change our bucket to test bucket. And when we do that, you notice we can now monitor our InfluxDB. We don't have any running virtual machines. All right, and you can see data is still kind of pouring in here. So we do have our LXC read and write. We don't have LXC CPU usage, so maybe the query for that is broken. And host CPU usage isn't being shipped either. And there we go. We just had to wait a few seconds here. All right, and that's it. That's how you get Grafana installed on Proxmox. The next step would be to customize these dashboards, but that's a different video. If you want me to make that video, leave a comment down below. Otherwise, we will progress forward with other things. But same thing here, right? This is kind of our lab environment. We have a couple LXCs, so there's not a lot to view here. But this is my production dashboard. And as you can see, I have a lot more information. It gives me a lot more visibility into my services. And that's it, boys. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please go ahead and hit the like button. If you'd like to see more, please tune in and subscribe. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Stay blessed.